If I was you, I'd be asking for a refund. Everything they do for DOC, they need to defund. Lazy guards, double cells, everything in here is hell. You ever been to the county jail praying that you get some mail? Then you hit receive and all the stories, can't believe them. I thank God that I'm alive, I thank God that I'm still breathing. After COVID, wearing masks, everyone's sad. How did a virus know a budget? It really makes me laugh. We had good times, bad times, but still it made us strong. It was hard to be accountable, I had to right my wrongs. But now I'm long and forgotten, they forgot about me.
Welcome to another compelling episode of the Defund DOC podcast, your number one premium community to hear true prison stories, conniving prison politics, and radical prison reform solutions that will end recidivist crime in America once and for all. Please welcome our hosts, Linda Thompson and Daniel J. Sims, as they delve into another hard-hitting and thought-provoking episode.
Welcome back to the Defund DOC podcast. I'm Linda, and I'm joined by my co-host, Daniel J. Sims.
Hey, friends. Welcome back to another episode. We're excited to break the abuse system that has been reaping harm upon our people for a generation. I wanted to raise a couple of topics, as we do every week, around what's going on in our world. So guess whose birthday it is yesterday? It was Linda's birthday, so I want everybody to say happy birthday to her in spirit. Happy birthday, Linda. So everybody that's listening, if you would like to give Linda a birthday gift, we really would like you to commit to putting some funds towards the crowdfunder in regards to the reality show. So let's just throw that out there. You know, we're really trying to get this pilot going. This reality show is not going to be a cheap endeavor, so we really need your help. Second thing that we wanted to speak about, I had been telling the audience about this bogus infraction I got hit with about 2 years ago. I had to go through 2 years of a litigation. I went through all the appeal process and all the way up to the Court of Appeals, and guess what? They finally expunged it. So, yay on that. I mean, this was a bogus infraction. They gave me an infraction for being a peacemaker. A couple of my community members got into a fist fight in the bathroom. I was in the outside of the bathroom saying, break it up. And instead of just honoring that, I was just trying to be a peacemaker. The administration, they hate me because I'm an activist. So they infracted me for aiding and abetting assault when the two guys that were fighting were just infracted for fighting. And they gave me diesel therapy, and they let the two guys that were fighting back on mainline. That's how badly they hated me. So I'm fighting for you guys. So yeah, I'm looking for an attorney to help me get a civil rights lawsuit going. They put me in the solitary confinement for almost 80-something days over this. The third one is I want to talk about briefly how extraction of money from our family and our friends is dividing our families from the people in their communities. It basically makes our people that are incarcerated beggars. You know, we in the incarcerated community don't want to ask anybody for nothing, you know what I mean? But yet it makes you seem like you are inherently a moocher, you know, by nature or something. But when in reality you are being enslaved, your labor is being stolen from you from the state, and so you're basically having to have your family send you money just to get soap and shampoo. And next thing you know, you're being alienated from your family because they can't afford all the things that it takes to stay in contact with you. The phone calls cost money, the emails cost money, commissary costs money. So I applaud Linda for sticking in there and fighting for this cause because, you know, they're basically extracting the money from our communities when in reality, basically, they should be just taking their foot off the neck of the American people. Allow our people to have their property right, which is their labor, minimum wage, under the Fair Labor Standards Act. That's all we ask for. That way our people will never have to ask anybody in the community for anything. Yeah, so I basically lost a relationship with my brothers and my sister, you know, because they are of the mind, I've never asked my 3 younger siblings for anything, not one thing, and yet they're alienated completely from me due to this corrupt system, whether it's prejudice or extraction. And my older brother, even though he had been incarcerated, he has such a deep prejudicial mind, even in regards to the prison population. He turned his life life around, which is very commendable, but yet he turned around and doesn't realize the deep injustices that are in here. You know, like, I'm a socially aware person, so I look to see the injustices that are occurring. You know, a lot of people don't do that. And, you know, I'm trying to fight for the millions of Americans, not just focused on myself and my selfishness. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I'm losing my own family. I have no family. Now I have one new family that I hope to marry into, my beautiful Linda. How do you feel about extraction, Linda? How is it affecting you?
I mean, I feel like most of my money goes to the prison.
Yeah, it's corrupt. They're stealing our labor, and then on the next hand, they're making us pay for everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's an evil, wicked system. You know what I mean? Very, very evil. So the fourth thing I wanted to add is a quick one, is that we made 2 songs, Gone and Forgotten and Artificial Intelligence. We would really like you guys to check them out and share them with your communities. That would be awesome. Lastly, Linda's starting a new job this week, so I really wanted to applaud her on that. She's working case management, helping those struggling with addictions and homelessness. So thank you for that, Linda.
We have a very special guest here with us today. We recently published a podcast with Megan Kolb, whose father, Dean Hoffman, died due to neglect in the Waupun Correctional Institution. This prison has recently been in the news due to the horrific, egregious neglect by prison staff. The warden and 8 other staff have been arrested due in part to the 4 deaths that occurred in such a short period of time. Today we will be speaking with Teresa Hewlett, a mother that is fighting for her son Damien's well-being at this very prison.
And it's very amazing to have people like Teresa that are stepping up and exposing the abuse that is happening to our people. So thank you so much, Teresa, for coming on.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Will you share a little bit about yourself and your son Damien?
Yeah, share a story that you recall, maybe of his childhood, something that reminds you of him, like of a good time.
Well, I'm a mother of 3. Damien is my middle child. He's 30 years old, and he is a very caring and loving person. He's got a huge heart. He has struggled with mental health issues pretty much his whole life. He started seeing a psychiatrist when he was 3. He really enjoys being with his family. His family is very important to him. As he grew up, his struggles became harder, just trying to figure out the right medications, being diagnosed with many things. From 3 years old, he was diagnosed with severe ADHD, and then he was diagnosed with oppositional defiant disorder, obsessive-compulsive disorder, depression, bipolar disorder, just a struggle. For the most part, he was a good kid. He just had outbursts when his medications would change. He had a lot of outbursts growing up. Very close with his siblings. He loves to fish and be outdoors. Damien's struggle with mental health wound him up easily being a follower instead of a leader. He's very intelligent. He's very obsessive. He obsesses over stuff. He's very compulsive. So, you know, bad ideas become really quickly interesting to him, unfortunately, and he's gotten himself in some trouble. And at 21, he ended up doing an armed robbery with 4 other people.
Was he struggling with substance use disorder when the robbery occurred?
Yes, he was. Once he turned 17 years old, he decided he was an adult and he didn't want to take the medication no more. Like I said, the medication was a struggle for him. He would gain weight, lose weight. He would go through really angry episodes when they went through medication changes. So once he became 17 years old, he decided he wasn't taking the medication anymore, and it led to him and I having differences and me making him leave home. You know, once he left home, he started hanging out with the wrong people, which he always kind of befriended the wrong people just because of the programs he was in. And I always questioned that as he was growing up, you know, like you're putting him in these day treatment programs, but you're putting him in there with kids that are like him or doing things worse than him, you know. So he's befriending these people, and now he's following problems. You know, he would easily follow the kids that were getting in trouble, you know, because they all friended each other. You know, they all became friends because they all had the mental health issues, and that can be a disaster,
Absolutely.
You know. And I always questioned that as he was growing up, you know, like how do we do this without introducing him to other people that could possibly, you know, talk him into the things that he easily is influenced to do.
So he ended up replacing his prescribed medication for self-medication with street drugs?
Yeah.
And so that's one of the things that we are really trying to expose the American people to, that big pharma should not have a monopoly on which medication that the American people are using to treat themselves, you know, and we're not advocating drug use, but how can you permit a person to take overdoses on all these different medications and then, make millions and billions of dollars off our people and then criminalize the person that's on the corner using a little bit of whatever they use, whether that's heroin or methamphetamine, and then putting them away for 20 years for using meth.
Right, or if you start handing a child a pill every day, they grow up thinking they need a medication to help them, and they become, immune to the fact that, yes, I can take pills, I need to take pills, and pills are going to keep me okay. Well, not all pills are good pills, and they don't understand that because they've always taken medication. The doctor's always switching the medication. So that was another thing I always questioned, like, how am I going to raise him to think that he is okay or to not feel like he needs medication to be okay? But he does. He needs the medication. Like, when he first started getting in trouble, and I asked the courts, what do I do to get him to take his medication? I was told that unless he's unable to dress himself, we can't court order him to take his medication. Well, why not? He's been on medication his entire life. Why now that he's 17, 18 years old does he not have to take it? He's got a mental health disorder. It shouldn't be up to him,
It's
tragic. Somebody that can say, okay, you do have these mental health disorders, and we do need to continue to work with your medications and make sure you're getting the help you need, instead of saying, oh, you're 18, you don't have to take it. Nobody can make you. It doesn't help anybody in that situation,
Absolutely. And I don't know if you are familiar with this or not, but in the 70s, they started emptying out mental health institutions and piping them into prisons. And that is what is exactly happening today. I mean, you can walk around in any prison in this country, and you will see people talking to themselves, walking around ostracized by the rest of the prison population, and then they end up getting targeted and assaulted or end up being used by the other prisoners to commit assaults, and then they get put in solitary confinement, which is a form of torture. It rewires your brain, and so you're essentially criminalizing mental health and making it worse, exacerbating the trauma and making our people worse, your son worse. And I feel like that's a crime in itself. It should be a crime against humanity. And
like, if you got somebody that is suicidal, the worst thing you could possibly do is stick them in a room by themselves, and they have nothing but their own thoughts. That's messed up. I don't want to swear, but their minds are already, obviously something's going on for them to want to harm themselves in that kind of way, but then to put them into solitary confinement alone by themselves with absolutely nothing is making it worse. It's not helping by any means. They need to be able to talk to somebody. When somebody's going through a suicidal episode, the first thing they should be doing is contacting a loved one to talk them out of this, to let them talk it out, let them get that out of their mind. Instead of putting them in a cell all alone where they have nothing to do but think about how they can do this. How can I end my life? This is the worst torture that anybody could put on a suicidal person. And as a mom, it breaks my heart. My son has attempted suicide so many times in there. And when I called up there, because I had gotten calls, I called Waupun because I was getting calls from other inmates telling me that my son was found unresponsive. Now, when I called and asked them to do a welfare check on my son, I said, or give me a call when something like this is going on. I can talk to him. They told me, you will never get a call from us unless your son is deceased.
That is absurd. Yeah, that is one of the main things that Defund DOC is trying to change, is to bring more extreme socialization into the prison. In countries like Norway, your families can come inside the prison. You are allowed to be socializing with the community because everybody's going back to the community. Why are you separating our people from their own community? You know what I mean? If your son is having issues, the first person you should be calling is their loved one and saying, hey, your loved one just got into a fist fight. Can you come in and talk to him, or talk to him on the phone and see what's going on and see if, why is he going through this mental crisis? And instead, they're just criminalizing people for all this behavior and just making them worse.
How hard is it to make a call?
Right. They're punishing them for something they have no control over. They have no control over their mental health. And they're not helping them with that. So why would you punish them because they have a mental health disorder? I know it's not fair.
Yeah, I really identify with your son because, I'm in here for the same crime and in the same circumstances. I struggle with substance use disorder. I've been incarcerated 20 years. Nobody got hurt, yet the state is murdering me with a long prison sentence.
My son's armed robbery, nobody had a scratch on him. Nobody went to a hospital. Yes, it was wrong. Yes, it was traumatizing for this family. And I don't, say that lightly because I wouldn't want no one to come in and rob me like that. It's a hard thing
to
accept as a mom. But at the same time, my son was sentenced to enough as much time as somebody that's murdered somebody. My son was sentenced to 21 years in prison. The judge put stipulations on his sentence. He's not allowed to go up for early release program until he's served 16 and a half years. He's not eligible for parole. He has to serve his whole time. And then they want him to do 15 years extended supervision, which to me, he was 21 years old. He has mental health disorders. He messed up.
Teresa, he shouldn't even have done 5 years. He should have been in there just enough time to get some treatment.
Everybody else that was involved in the same exact crime is out. My son is still sitting very hard. He's been there.
This is the injustices that our people are facing. This is what this is happening to millions of our people.
And if I had money for a lawyer, would he probably be out? Probably, but not everybody has money like that, unfortunately. You know, and that's the hard part. Like, we have to still survive out here, but, you know, his thing is, you guys should just all save up money and get me out. Well, it's easier said than done, you know, and we would love to be able to bring him home and find a lawyer that, you know, we could afford. But unfortunately, it's not that easy. But I don't believe that he's already doing his time for his crime. He should not be being tortured. My son had a lawsuit in court, which he settled out last October for $4,000. They mediated, and he agreed to $4,000, which is not a lot of money. But to a prisoner that has nothing, it is. And,
speaking of that, I don't mean to interrupt you, but when you are sitting in prison with that amount of money, when you're not having anything to buy any products or anything, that's another way that they keep our families separated, because what they do is they make it so that you're basically a beggar to your community, to your family, everything, because they got their foot on our neck. They're taking our labor. They steal our labor as a slave, and then when you ask your family and friends are struggling just to make rent. So how are they putting money on the phone? How are they going to send you emails? How are they going to buy you a food package, a property package, and help you with commissary? So instead of being able to, you know, do those things for somebody because you're basically can't even, you know, pay rent every month, you just alienate yourself from your own, you know, son, brother, whatever, and it creates division, and it disrupts families, separates families, and it's an injustice in itself. Speaking of what you were talking about earlier, Teresa, in regards to not having money for an attorney, a guy named Paul Wright and Tara Hivel wrote a book called Prison Nation, The Warehousing of America's Poor. And what they're doing is they're targeting the American people that don't have, you know, big money to hire specialists and all these attorneys and experts to help them get out of prison. I've been in prison 20 years, Teresa, and I've never met a millionaire, not one time. And I've seen thousands of people.
Because the millionaires have lawyers and their kids get off.
Exactly.
So my son, once he settled out with his $4,000, then they started retailing against my son for filing the lawsuit. My son has another lawsuit in court right now. 2 of the officers that were arrested on Wednesday are in that lawsuit, along with others that were not arrested. And there has been such excessive force and so much done to him that he literally wrote me and said, "Mom, it's either they're going to kill me or I'm going to kill myself, and at this point I'm not going to let them kill me." He said,
"Oh my goodness."
He said, "I literally feel like a little boy that cannot protect himself any longer from these monsters." And he said, "I don't know what to do besides take my own life." And that's horrible. That's horrible.
Exactly. I wrote that in a blog the other day. Linda probably knows the name of the blog, but I wrote a blog talking about how, you know, I've gotten countless litigation against the state for that type of behavior and abuses. And I feel like at any moment these people can make up a context and create some kind of false narrative and say that I was resisting or something, and next thing you know, my neck's going to be broke. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's
that lawless inside a prison.
Yeah, he told me just tonight that they had took him out on a pass and they stuck something under his mattress, some sort of paperwork, and he had his neighbor crumple up and flush it down the toilet because he didn't know why it was there. He didn't know why they put it there. But he said he fears every day of his life. He fears that they're going to try to hurt him or kill him. And he also says, "I'm not going to be scared. I'm going to keep fighting. You know, I don't deserve
keep fighting." He is a hero to the American people. This is the thing. This could be anybody listening's son. You know what I mean? This is your son today, Teresa. But I promise you, there's somebody in the audience that this is going to be their son tomorrow, their daughter tomorrow.
A lot of these inmates are terrified. They're terrified terrified to speak up.
Yeah.
Terrified. And
Hey, we're sitting ducks. We're sitting ducks.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got these people with all this power.
So I literally said today, I'm so grateful that my son is like me, because I am that type of person that if you feel it's right. And if I need to, I don't care what other people think, as long as I know what I'm feeling, I stand up for that. And he's the same way.
Can you talk about what you've been doing in regards to advocacy and changes that you hope to see from all of this?
I've been contacting Tony Evers' office, our governor, for about a year now about the retaliation towards my son, because I do fear for his life, and I haven't gotten much out of him. I do believe he possibly did help start the investigation. I know at first he said that the DOC was investigating it, which is funny to me, because I'm like, how is the DOC investigating their own people's crimes? Like, you got to have somebody from the outside do this. Otherwise, I don't feel like it's even legit. Like, I'm not giving up. I'm not going to stop. I'm going to keep contacting you, and I'm going to keep coming. Like, I don't care. Like, enough is enough. I went up to the DOC on Damien's 30th birthday back in November and protested, tried to speak with them. Nobody would come out. Nobody would speak with any of us.
Not to interrupt, but I don't know if you're familiar, but see, there's no market or reality show for what we want the American people to focus on. They want to show reality shows about people getting drunk and getting hot and having, floozy sex and all this stuff. But why don't we talk about having a reality show about love and prison activism? And so that's what we need, people like you that are out there, that have loved ones incarcerated that are protesting. Those are the people that need to be highlighted. That's the social justice issue that is in demand and that really matters. And I really applaud you, Teresa, for going the extra mile and not showing indifference.
I am planning on going to Waupun on Sunday to protest again on my son's behalf. I can't sit back and watch it no more. At first I was scared to say something. I was afraid to step up because I was afraid of retaliation. My son's being retaliated against. I'm worried, I was worried about, the police, I believe, all work together in some way, shape, or form. Like I said, the DOC was investigating their own employees' crimes. They were covering up stuff, After the press conference the other night, I contacted Dodge County Sheriffs, and I let them know that a year ago I asked them to go do a welfare check on my son because he was found unresponsive and nobody at the prison would answer my calls. They told me they couldn't go into the prison, that the warden, I would have to talk to the warden, and I expressed to the sheriff the other night, my son's been there 8 years. I've never spoken to the warden, not one time, and I've called numerous times. So they are going to have the lead detective on the case that is investigating all these deaths and these crimes. They are going to have him contact me, and I told him he needs to contact my son because there are other individuals that should be held accountable and charged for their wrong still.
Hey, man, I commend those that whatever kicked this off, Teresa. Amen to that. You know what I mean? Like, it's about time.
I truly believe, Megan, me and the other 3 individuals who have passed family have really pushed this. And I really hope and pray that this isn't just something to get the media quiet. I hope that they're really going to keep going with this and do what's right. They need to shut it down. It's not livable for anybody. I don't care if you are a prisoner. You should not be put. It's a torture chamber. It's not even safe for people to live in. Not only that, but they've got officers in there treating them worse than we would treat a freaking wild animal.
I know. Isn't it insane?
Nobody that has a heart would do that to somebody.
The way that they're training these officers to treat the American people is appalling.
They're not
they treat you like an animal.
They're not even training them. They're throwing these young, uneducated, probably people that have mental health issues, their darn self, into the system to care for these people, and they're not caring for them. They're there to get paid, and that's it. And they treat them however they want. There's supervisors, there's lieutenants that are turning their backs and allowing this torture. My son was maced, tased, and handcuffed to a strip cage with his clothes cut off of him, and they didn't let him wash the mace off him for 5 days.
Oh, my gosh.
My son has permanent twitching in his lip since he's been tased and permanent marks on his back.
Oh, my God. I'm so sorry to hear that.
He tried to file a PREA complaint about them cutting his clothes off of him in front of 2 female officers, and they denied him to file the report.
And inform the audience, just so the audience knows, a PREA
Prison Rape Elimination Act.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's appalling, Teresa. This is the stuff that we are trying to expose. We're trying to reform these prisons to turn them into treatment centers, into career centers. It's time to turn the page on the system that has bred from slavery. That's what this system is It came from the slave system, and that's what this is.
What are they doing to rehabilitate anybody?
Nothing.
What are they doing?
I've been in prison 20 years. I haven't got no degree.
Absolutely nothing. They're not doing anything. They have absolutely nothing for you individuals. Nothing.
No, and they're releasing people every day.
The worst of the worst food that they can give you, and that's it.
And they're releasing people every single day unrehabilitated.
And obviously, in Waupun, sometimes you don't even get water because they shut the water off when they feel like it. That's how one of the inmates died, from starvation and dehydration.
Wow,
that's
appalling.
Terrible.
Yeah, that press release was extremely hard to watch, to hear about what was happening.
I was absolutely sick to my stomach, to the point I was sick. Like, I literally could not eat. I felt sick. By the end of the night, I had the worst headache from my anxiety and my stress, worried about my son. Like I said, if something happens to him, the only way I will ever find out is it when I don't get that call, when I do not receive that call, because I speak to my son every single day, every day. Sometimes.
Yeah, I think that we like to believe that we contribute a little bit towards exposing this prison as well. And I really think that it's people like you, it's people like Megan that are willing to, face the retaliation, that they're going to
speak out.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, my son's like, what more can they do to me? What more can they do to me that they haven't already done?
That's where I'm at. I know that I'm probably going to die in prison. You know what I mean? Like, it's sad. Like, I didn't kill nobody, but the state is killing me. It's like, it's immoral to have a government kill its people unjustly like this, and they're doing it across the country.
And they're getting away with it. They're committing crimes that other people are in prison for, and they're getting away with it.
Exactly. Oh, yeah, they'll kidnap you. They'll strip you down naked. They'll torture you. They'll treat you like an animal. And if you did that to somebody in society, you'd get a death penalty.
Starve you, refuse to give you your medications when you're begging for them, pleading for them. That is just inhumane. It's disgusting, and people like that should be charged and never allowed to work with humans again.
I do believe that there will be more that comes from this. I believe that there's going to be more people that end up facing charges, in the coming days.
Yes, the reporter that did my interview and our news report that I sent to you with me and Damien, I spoke with him last night, and he has a correctional officer that used to work at Waupun. He was supposed to meet with her yesterday, and she canceled, and he said that he was hoping that she really was going to do it today. But even other correctional officers that used to work there are afraid to come out and say something. That shows just how bad it really, truly is in there.
That's the thing that people don't realize. Not all these correctional officers are bad people. They're just being pressured by the culture of fear and control. So those people that are filled with hate and prejudice towards our people, those are the ones that are in control of the COs that are good-natured people. You know what I mean? So they're
even out here in the real world, you got people going, well, he did what he did. He's got to do his time. He did what he did. He's got to do his time. Well,
I hate hearing that because we didn't.
I'm okay
I hate
with
hearing
somebody
that.
having to do their time, but I don't agree with the way they have to do their time. They have to do their time, but they do not have to be tortured. It's a torture chamber. It's not a rehabilitation center. It's not helping anybody
and also,
being in prison.
When people,
and they wonder why people are institutionalized and they come out acting like crazy lunatics, because they've been treated this way for so long that they're full of anger, they're full of sadness, and what do they got to do with all that anger and sadness once they get out besides treat other people the way they've just been treated for 8, 10, 12, 20 years, whatever it is.
I know, and it's sad. And then, they're facing stigma. When they get back to society, people are judging them. The only culture that they knew was a culture of violence. I mean, I'm surrounded by extreme violence every day. I'm surrounded by guard brutality every day. I mean, can you imagine once the day that I finally do get free, I'm going to be so traumatized that it's going to be so hard for me to function. Linda is going to have to, keep me in track because I'm going to probably want to barricade myself in the basement somewhere and try to hide from the world,
And it's causing more mental health problems for people that already have mental health. Like, it's not helping them. Like, it's so traumatizing. And if you don't have PTSD, you will have when you come out of there. That's the sad part. That's the absolute sad part. They're supposed to be helping. They're not helping. There is no such thing as help when you go to prison. I'd hate to say that.
They've actually wrote books about it called The Trauma of Prison, and it was a book written by somebody, and they actually talked about how you're coming into prison for nonviolence, coming out more violent and traumatized, and it's actually causing more crimes than it's solving, you know?
Exactly. And they don't realize that it doesn't only harm the inmate that's going to prison or that's in prison. It's harming us. I'm not going to lie. The first 4 years my son was in prison, there was not a day that I did not go by without crying. If somebody walked up to me at the grocery store and said, "How's your son?" I started crying. And to the point I had to go get counseling. I had to seek counseling. I had to start taking depression and anxiety pills because I didn't know how to deal with it and accept the fact that my son is gone. My son is not with me. You know,
yeah,
it's not
absolutely.
only hard for them, you guys. It's hard for us as parents and loved ones. My son, Damien's oldest brother, it took him almost 3 years to open a letter from his brother because he was so hurt by the fact that his brother's gone. You know, like it's not.
It's time to bring sanity back. It's time to bring sanity back. We are all one people. You know what I mean? Why are we foreclosing our people? Why are we foreclosing our people to such standards and conditions so that when they come out they think they're animals and they commit more violence and more crime? Doesn't society have a public safety concern that they're treating the American people in prison because they're coming out worse, creating more victims because of the way that they're being treated in prison?
It's no different than taking a dog and kenneling it for years and then letting it out. You know, it's no different. This is just unacceptable. People need to be treated like humans. They made a mistake. They're doing their time. They're being punished, but they don't have to be tortured. You know, there's no reason. Anybody with a heart should stand up, and that takes our governors, our legislators, all that. It takes people with a higher power to have a bigger heart, and most of them don't, and that's the sad part.
That is the sad part. They have an incentive, Teresa. Their incentive is to steal the labor of the American people. These prisons, they made, $110 million in the food factory industry here at this prison. It costs only $33 million to incarcerate everybody at this prison. So they made quadruple the amount of money off the slave labor in just one industry.
They're making all this money off of the families that are paying for all these apps
I
and
know.
these phones and these phone calls, and then they switch it. They take the tablets, and now you got a new tablet. So everything your family just paid for, you no longer have. It's gone.
Yeah, they're extracting it. They're extracting the money from our families and our friends.
Yeah.
And if they don't extract it from your family or friend, most likely your family and your friends have ostracized you because they can't afford to help you. So they don't want to feel guilty, so they just disappear from your life, and you might not talk to a loved one for 20, 30 years because they can't afford packages.
I know what that's like, because for a while I felt so guilty I couldn't keep money on my son's phone that I would ignore the calls.
Exactly.
And that became very hard, not for just me, but for him. And now, you know, I am fortunate enough that I keep $20 on my phone and talk to him every single day. And I'm grateful for that. But what about the ones that can't? What about the mom that can't afford to talk to her son every day? That's the sad part.
They're profiting off our people's misery. They're profiting off our people's misery, and they're profiting off their labor. It's just a system of cruelty and hate. It's time to come back to a real reasonable sanity in regards to criminal justice, reducing all sentences for non-homicide down to 8 to 10 years, period, maximum.
I agree.
You know,
I agree.
That's just enough time for the government to treat them and educate them, and then let them go back into society to be a productive member. Like, that would increase our GDP. That would reduce crime. You know what I mean? Like, Teresa, you would have your son back within 5 years, you know? What a beautiful world that would be. And this is what they're doing in Norway. In Norway, their prisoners go out to work. Every night they come right back to their prison, but they're going out to work in the community because they don't have slavery there. They do not have slavery in Norway, so they can't make them people stay there to work like they can here. That's the reason why we're suffering the way that we are, is because they have an incentive. And I just really applaud you, Teresa, for having the heart and the courage to step up. And I really can't wait to speak to your son and to get Damien's perspective of the injustices that are happening there. Wow, I really applaud you guys. You guys might have brought some real change there. And don't stop what you're doing. This is your community. You guys are our family. Thank you so much, Teresa, for sharing your story.
Thank you. Yes, thank you, and I greatly appreciate you guys reaching out. I do.
We are now going to hear from Damien Hewlett about his experiences at Waupun. Daniel is unable to be on this call with us, even though we tried just about everything to make it happen. We would like to emphasize that Damien Hewlett, as a guest on this podcast, is exercising his freedom of speech. We believe in and support his right to express his thoughts and experiences openly and honestly. We want to make it clear that any form of retaliation against him for his participation in this podcast or for speaking out in any other way is unacceptable and unjust. We, as the hosts of this podcast, stand firmly against any acts of retaliation towards Damian Hewlett or any other guest for that matter. It is in the best interest of Waupun Correctional Institution as well as any other institutions to treat all individuals fairly and without prejudice. Welcome to the podcast, Damian. We have spoken briefly through messages, but can you talk to us about some of what you're currently dealing with?
I had two different passes. I had a Native Services pass as well as the HSU, which is Health Service Unit pass, at 8 in the morning. But the Native Services pass, they had come to get me for that first, and there were other guys in Native Services that said that, they had HSU as well Wednesday morning, but, for some reason, on the way to Native Services, 3 COs walked up on me, asked for me exclusively, like, hey, Mr. Hewitt, we got to go over to HSU. So I go over to HSU, and there's a sergeant named Anthony Nelson. His wife was on the news trying to speak out on behalf of the officers and the warden acting like they got railroaded. But, Anthony Nelson was a sergeant at Health Services Unit, and I told him, like, hey, I'd like to just cancel this pass and go to my Native Services pass. He was like, no, you can go wait in the waiting room. I was like, why? He was like, because you're going to go to RA2, which is the restricted housing unit. I'm like, for what? He was like, because if you don't receive medical treatment right now, you're going on medical observation. Because I've been on a hunger strike, but that's not his job. That is a Stell versus Gamble, which is a federal case that says that officers are not supposed to intervene in our treatment or within our medical care. None of that, yet that's what he did. Plus, he threatened me and intimidated me with medical observation, which is a violation of his work rule number 14. That is totally inappropriate, but I let him know, like, hey, just get to my, religious service pass. I was going ahead and against my will, let them take my vitals and do what they got to do. So I was forced to allow them to do medical treatment on me. And then the next morning, Thursday, there was in the South Hall the same sergeant, Anthony Nelson. And before I left HSU on Wednesday night, I had let him know, like, hey, I will be speaking out in the media talking about you and the things that you did by threatening me with that is against your work orders, your abusing your authority. I will be speaking to the media exerting my First Amendment. So come Thursday, the next day, he's working in the South Cell Hall where I'm housed as the cell hall sergeant. So which means he's in the cage operating the cell hall. He's a superior in the cell hall at the time. So, right before breakfast, there was a gentleman named Cedric Moffitt, and he was walking with the CO, and he had let the sergeant know, like, hey, I'm going through some things, Laissez Skippy. Just told him, like, hey, I'm suicidal. And Shelby Roser told the sergeant, Anthony Nelson the same thing, like the man just said he's suicidal. Sergeant Anthony Nelson decided to say, well, I don't care, put him back in the cell. So by that statement, that is against his work rules and pretty much like blatant disregard for human life. Blatant disregard. So like a lot of us had called TMJ4 News. As the day progressed, my neighbor, Sean Eubanks, he gets out in about 34 days. Next month he'll be speaking out about a lot of things. But, we felt like due to the staff misconduct of Nelson that he should have been walked out of the prison. So we were asking for supervisors to come to the cell hall. They were not acknowledging that. So my neighbor, Sean Eubanks, took it upon himself to yell that he was suicidal. We needed to talk to pretty much psychological services unit because they have to come evaluate him and ask him, is he okay, stuff like that, because he wanted to report what happened. He wanted to report Nelson for what he did. But the thing is, when you report that type of stuff, they take you either in E1 or E2 right there in front of the sergeant's cage. So when this brother was down there reporting so that an incident report could be done through the psychological services unit about him, Nelson, they're pretty much saying like he didn't care about Cedric Moffitt saying he was suicidal and telling him to put him back in his cell. Like when he was reporting this, Sergeant Nelson heard everything. So Sergeant Nelson took it upon himself to retaliate against Sean Eubanks and literally lie and say that this man threatened him, which I know he did not. Then on top of that, when that happened, there were two different superior officers that came. One was the lieutenant, Jeremy Stenick. I asked him to turn on his body camera when interacting with inmates, and then told him I was about to talk about staff misconduct. And then he wouldn't turn on his body camera, so I addressed him. He's like, hey, please turn on your body camera. Like, that's your job. He's like, we're done here. And Jeremy Stenick, Lieutenant Jeremy Stenick, walked off on me. And eventually, a Captain Kyle Tritthead came, and I tried to tell him about the staff misconduct of Nelson, and they act like they don't want to address their staff misconduct. They're like, oh, just follow the chain of command and write it up. But that's the problem. The chain of command here has been flawed for so long. We filed something to the ICE department, which consists of right now Tania Moon and somebody named B. Kolb, and it used to be Lana Wilson. I actually have evidence where Lana Wilson lied during an investigation. You know, it came out later in interrogatories in one of my lawsuits, and as well as discovery requests for video footage that Lana Wilson said that Zachary Lang and then Officer Jason Hill were not at my door during the inmate complaint process, and that's why she said she dismissed the complaint. But like I said, through discovery phase with the lawsuit, you know, both officers admitted, yeah, the video said that we were at his door at approximately 8:34 p.m. on September 19th of 2022. So if that's the case, that means the IC department is flawed. And on top of that, when we do catch people lying in the IC department, they have a preponderance to reject the complaint. Now, this is the thing about a rejected complaint. When a complaint is rejected, it stays within the institution, and it is appealed to the warden. Now, we've seen who that was. That was Randall Hepp, the villain. You know, he was just charged for 4 deaths in Waupun. So he had a preponderance to just go along with them. Then on top of that, if the ICE is dismissed, it goes to the DOC building in Madison. So now with those facts being what they are, you know, it's like they always rejected any time that we would catch the IC department up lying. We'd write them up personally and complain about them. They'd reject it and keep it in-house. So then it wouldn't go to Madison. So then the DOC officials in Madison wouldn't know the folly that they were subjecting us to.
These sound like people that were bullied when they were younger and they're on a power trip at this point.
That's exactly what it is. You know, I peeped that as well after years of being here. I've been on for 8 years, so I read psychology books, you know, child psychology, adult psychology, pre-adolescent psychology. Like, it's definitely, that's what it is for a lot of these guys. And a lot of them have, like, what we call Napoleon complex. They feel like they now have a sense of power with that blue shirt and this Department of Corrections badge that they have on their waist. So they feel like, oh, I'm in control now. Well, really, that is a false sense of control because, truthfully, you know, I've learned to have real control. Like, if I can control my demeanor when Officer Andrade was putting his finger in my face yesterday, and given I've been through, you know, staff assaulting me, and, you know, they look at it like they say I might have PTSD and stuff like that. So it's like yesterday, like, when he was putting his finger in my face, Andrade, I told him, like, could you please put your finger in my face? And, like, it took everything for me not to snap. And the fact that I was close to my cell and I could look past him and see my vision board of my mother and my nieces, my nephews, and my friends, like, that's what really brought me back to reality. I didn't know, like, your fingers in my face, your hands gesturing toward me, like, I don't know if you're going to hit me, like, I don't know what you want. We can't understand why these people act like this. To sit here and demean somebody is ridiculous. Like, being in prison has allowed me to look back on my childhood when I used to go to the zoo with my mother and my siblings, and, like, now I understand why the gorilla used to look sad, you know, the lion and tiger, they used to look sad, you know, like they were teary-eyed. And now I get it because I'm in a 6x12 cell, you know, and I've had times where I've been teary-eyed, where I've been sad, you know. Now I'm not good as big, but I have to pull myself back up out the struggle and out the mud and keep on pushing. Another way that we're treated different is like an equal protection of the 14th Amendment violation, because when I was assaulted, because if excessive force, it came out in the investigation that excessive force was used on me on November 5th. But, you know, an inmate was to assault me and I wanted to move to charge them, or an inmate was to assault an officer and also wanted to move to charge the inmate, they would immediately contact outside authorities to get an incident report and police report filed. But when I asked to charge Javiana Pucic, contact outside authorities to charge, you know, Lieutenant Thompson, Brandon Fisher, Lieutenant Leopold, like, she said we don't contact outside authorities. How not? That's not equal protection of the laws for the 14th Amendment.
Since the press conference and the arrest, have the conditions in there improved at all?
Not at all. Like, I did a press conference. There was a vigil for the 4 people that died on Sunday. My mom was there. Megan Cole was there. My sister was there. And I got the chance to speak. It's actually on Megan Cole's Facebook Live, like the whole thing, me speaking and everybody speaking. Yeah, it's like, all that we're asking is stuff that we should have coming anyway. You know, more than 2 showers a week, more than 2 rec periods, like stuff that we should have coming. You know, they spend $80,000 on structured rec equipment, and I guarantee you that the general public does not know that we have yet to even use child sexual work equivalent. So they just wasted $80,000 in tax dollars. So that's been over here for roughly, what, a year and a half, 2 years now? We ain't even been able to touch it.
So you guys have been on restricted movement that long?
Yeah. I ain't seen my family on a visit since March of 2023. If you think about it, like, we pretty much on administrative confinement because there are dudes on AC3, right, which is administrative confinement level 3. They get canteen. We get canteen. They get 2 showers a week. We get 2 showers a week. They get 2 record periods. We get 2 record periods. It's like, even done nothing wrong, so it's like, really doesn't make too much sense.
What kind of things have you dealt with since you've been in? How long have you been in there?
I've been incarcerated in Waupun since June of 2016, but I've been, down since January 13, 2016 in total. So going on 9 years.
So it's been a while, and your mom kind of went over some of the stuff that you've had to deal with in there. You basically just kind of fear retaliation constantly.
Well, I used to, when I first got incarcerated, I was, 22 years old. I was a young man. Well, let's just say a young boy. I'm a man now. I was a boy back then. I had boy-like ways. I was still trying to find myself. I didn't know who I was. I was always trying to prove something to somebody else, older dudes in prison that were, not the best type of role models, First getting in here, I was doing a lot of, physical combative things, not with just like other prisoners, but with staff as well. I was lost, you know what I'm saying? I had, 22 years old, I ended up with getting 21 and a half years in prison, It was like, find myself.
Have you had any kind of classes or anything while you've been in there?
That's the thing about Wisconsin's Department of Corrections. Wow. Well, a lot of taxpayers probably don't realize this in the state of Wisconsin, that their tax dollars are going to so-called rehabilitate, people who commit crimes in the great state of Wisconsin, but they don't realize that there is a DOC and DAI policy that says that people that are incarcerated in the state of Wisconsin cannot receive treatment until up to 3 years of their release. So I guarantee you, any psychologist will sit here and tell you that human beings are creatures of habit. I mean, first, not even a psychologist can say this, And if a person has a way of criminal thinking since they were young, and they don't receive cognitive programming or anything like that until up to 3 years of their release. The person has anger management problems from their youth on up, and they're not receiving anger management up to 3 years of their release, and they have 20 years, 30 years in prison. If it's 20 years, you're not receiving treatment until 17 years in. If it's 30 years, you're not receiving treatment until 27 years in. So it's like that policy in beginning of itself allows for people to become worse within their ways and not receive that treatment and not receive that help. And that's why Wisconsin right there has the greatest recidivism rate.
You're living in a trauma-filled environment. To not address anything until that last 3 years, that doesn't help anything.
Really doesn't. Then on top of that, and here we do with retaliation, There's been a plethora of instances, I had settled out of suit last September, and it was for something like $4,000 or whatever. But after that, one of the defendants that was in that case, which was Brandon Fisher, he just made national news. Dodge County just charged him, as well as 7 other staff, as well as the warden from Wisconsin Department of Corrections, and he was one of the people that were there. But then, that was September 20th, I settled that out. Lo and behold, come November 5th, he's supposed to be the acting RSU supervisor. He allows Justin L. Thompson to utilize excessive force on me. Even after all I was doing was simply just hey, Marty in a strip cage, tethered to the door, non-aggressive, cordial respect for the whole time. It's on video. And I told him, hey, I'm fully willing to strip out, but I'd like first to talk to you about your work rules, which you're violating by lying and trying to place me on observation status. So this supervisor at the time, Justin L. Thompson, decided to spray me with, gas station spray or OC spray right in my eyes. When I can't really do anything to anybody, I'm behind a door that's closed, tethered to this door. And when he does it, I simply tell him, hey, what you just did is excessive force by Governor Tony Evers' executive order number 111. And the man sprayed me a second time, as I'm still tethered to the door, non-aggressive. Even when he sprayed the first time, I didn't really snap off or curse or do anything like that. And at the door, they put the shackles on me, cuffs behind my back, stuff like that. And I'm still tethered to this door, and I'm on my knees. I have a knee injury as well as a spinal problem, back problem called spondylosis. And instead of getting help to my feet by these supervisors and these other officers, as I was defenseless, I was tasing my back by Justin Thompson, while everybody sat around and let it happen. Eventually they got me to my feet, and walked me to what I believe was the A-range lower shower area. And they didn't take the cuffs off, didn't take the shackles off. They, put my head under the water for a couple seconds. And that, intensified the OC spray, and it was burning more, and pulled my head out. And they were like, oh, it's time to go. I was like, no, please, it's burning. And I was, begging and pleading and just asking them. I even notified them, hey, this is excessive force by policy. You have to let me take care of my hygiene per your own policy. He's like, please, just let me use some soap to wash this stuff off. And they refused to do so, put my head under a second time for a couple of seconds and pulled me back out. No soap or no nothing. They're just intensifying the burning. They walked me back upstairs, tethered me to another strip cage, forced me to my knees, and I told them a second time, hey, I'm willing to strip out, And Lieutenant Thompson took upon himself to do a more intrusive search on me and in front of a female staff member, even after I notified him that it was against clear protocol to please have her leave. And I was held down. My clothes were cut off of me. My staff member had fondled my penis, and I don't know exactly which one, and then my anus was groped as well. And what they called a so-called staff-assisted strip search, but how are you going to do that when I tell you that I'm willing to strip and I'm not aggressive this whole time? That was intrusive, and in the midst of that happening, I'm explaining to him on camera because the female CO, Bridget Prosper, she was holding the camera, and I asked them to have her leave, and I let them know, this is a violation of my pre-rights. If they still did, I told them that I would be moving to press charges for sexual assault and destruction of my property because I told you I'm willing to strip out. So there's no problem. No probable cause or anything for you to sit here and cut my clothes off. That was all unjustified, And like I said, Brandon Fisher, he was there. He's supposed to be the acting RIT supervisor. So he's just letting these things happen. I had settled a suit with him 4 months prior. Well, not even 4 months prior. This happened November 5th, 2023. I settled that suit September 20th. So it's they say officer's action and or his inaction can be a form of retaliation. Well, that day his inaction to allow another supervisor to do all of that was, his form of retaliation. Yeah. They get to wash their OC spray out for 5 days. I had to sit with that stuff on me for 5 days. So they ran regular hours in RHU. And then ever since then, I've been having severe headaches, the left side, back side of my head. I've been getting these pressure headaches, and I was tasing the left side of my back. I've been having pain in my neck, and then exacerbated pains in my back. I already had back issues. I've had pain in my left knee. I've had involuntary twitching of the left side of my lower lip. And it's ironic that the security director, during the press conference with the Orange County Sheriff's, I heard numerous reports, why isn't Yana Pusic, the security director, being charged? And then they gave some, excuse pertaining to the law, so-called supposedly law, they skipped whatever they said. But the ironic part is my mother, I sent her, she just received this on Monday, with the actual letters and correspondence where I wrote Yana Pusic 3 different times, breaking down the law as relevance to what happened to me and how our officers were wrong. And even referenced actual federal case laws for excessive force that were in direct alignment with what occurred and what happened to me, or came up that those officers were wrong. And she steadily kept up the facade as if what had occurred to me by her officers was just okay. Her response was numerous times to me, I reviewed the incident and I did not see them acting out of policy. So it took for my mother to go up to the Department of Corrections head in Madison, their office, and protest on my 30th birthday, which was November 15th, 10 days after this assault on me, which was November 10th. And that's where she actually met Megan Cole. And Megan Cole, she's been a godsend. She's in for the long haul.
So sad that it takes something like this to bring people together.
It definitely is. I let her know all the time, I'm proud of her. She's resilient, she's strong. I know for a fact that she's always going to have that wound in her heart. And I just wish she didn't have to live with that. The Department of Corrections, Waupun staff, they caused that hurt to that woman. They caused that hurt to that family and numerous other families. It needs to stop.
So what's been going on in there since the press release?
Well, last week, there was a peaceful protest. A bunch of brothers on the Northwest Hall, they sat down and, I've expressed this on Special News with Cody Taylor. I don't believe that the brothers were wrong whatsoever. We've been subjected to these inhumane conditions for so long that now that we do have the media attention, people are caring. They want to know if it's for us to speak out. It's an environment of pretty much revolution right now. It's an environment of brothers realize that we cannot enter this environment of hope right now. So many people had lost hope for what was really wrong for so long that they thought it was even normal, So I just had to let the brothers know earlier, they're well, not everybody's engaging in it, and I had to explain to them, listen, man, at the end of the day, look at Martin Luther King, look at Malcolm X, look at Gandhi. When them brothers did what they did, did, they didn't have everybody behind them, but they had enough people that had enough heart that was willing to speak out for change. And that's how change starts. It doesn't start with everybody being engaged, but the more people that, decide to do this hunger strike and stand strong on it and uphold our rights and speak out about it as to why we're doing this, eventually there will be change. And as long as the ones who start continue to stay fast and hold strong, eventually more people will follow. But it's for us to lead, for them to follow. That's where it's at right now. We have certain staff members that are trying to even violate their own policy. Like I said earlier, they threatened me with medical observation. I have not skipped 9 meals per their policy, but I was threatened with that. But as I explained to them, I know your policy. All I'm doing is I'll skip 7 meals, cost you every time I skip the meals. Then I'll accept the 8th meal, then get right back into skipping 7 meals, so then it's still costing you. But then by policy, you can't place them on medical ops, so if you do, that's immediate lawsuit. Immediately you violate your own policies, negligence on a state level, all of that. You can't threaten me with something that's out of your bounds. That is an abuse of your authority. Yet the environment in Waupun has been so long, since this is the oldest prison in the state of Wisconsin. They feel like they have some sort of seniority, as if they can do what they want, that they're in a different ball game. It's been that environment for so long that they have security director Yana Pusic and the Warden Randall Hepp not caring and letting them do them as freelance. So it's like they were doing them because at the end of the day, when they do something wrong, the ICE department is not going to investigate it. Yana Pusic is not going to investigate it. And if they are sued, it usually don't come out of their personal paychecks. It comes out of tax dollars. So they have an error about themselves where they have a preponderance to say, write it up. I don't care.
I believe that changes will happen. It's just a matter of time at this moment.
I concur with that statement.
We are almost out of time, so I'd just like to thank you, Damien, for your time and speaking with us on the podcast today.
I do thank you for your time.
Hey, friends, another episode is over. We want to keep improving this podcast, so we need your suggestions for future episodes. Also, as you know, I have been in prison almost 20 years, so if you have any questions about the criminal justice system, feel free to ask, and I will try to answer it. Please email your suggestions or questions on our website. Do you have a social media community that you can share our posts with? Please join our social media platforms and share our posts. That really helps. Also, I know you are busy, but taking one moment to do a review would help us tremendously. Thank you all.